Welcome to Seaview Circle, a podcast in which your hosts, that's us, Doug and Brady, will be recapping and reviewing our favorite TV shows and movies of the past, present, and possibly the future, all in service to our end goal of determining just how highbrow or lowbrow our viewing taste is. My name is Brady.
And I'm Doug, and today we are diving into the second episode from Season 1 of Knots Landing, which is history's longest-running primetime soap, now finally available to stream along with 343 other episodes on Plex TV.
We should note that technically, Dallas has more episodes than its spinoff, but that show only aired for 13 years before being canceled, while Knots was around for 14 years. We'll discuss more about Knots Landing's Dallas beginnings a bit later on, but for now, how are you, Doug?
I am great. I'm super excited about this episode. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, I like it because we're going to get a little bit more involved with some of the characters. We're going to see a little bit more peeling of the onion.
Exactly.
Right?
Today's episode is called Community Spirit, and its synopsis from IMDb reads, JR visits Knots Landing as he wants to drill for oil offshore, and the community protests.
The writing team behind this episode is show creator David Jacobs with Rob Gilmer and Elizabeth Pizer. Director for this episode is James Sheldon, and I did a little bit of research, and he will be directing another episode of Knots Landing in Season 2. Our episode guest stars include Dallas villain Larry Hagman as J.R. Ewing, as well as Joseph Hacker as a PR dude working with the Ewings, who, as we will soon learn, has unexpected ties to Laura Avery.
It's very exciting.
Also, fun fact, this episode originally aired on CBS on January 3rd, 1980, making it the first of 258 Knots Landing episodes to air during that decade.
That's a lot of eppies.
All right, so we start off, though, not in Knots Landing. We start off with the Dallas theme song.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but that was kind of jarring to me, right?
Yeah, I thought it was a little weird because I was like, oh, okay. I mean,
here we are. We see the whole episode, the pilot episode of Knots Landing. And then in episode 2, we start off with the Dallas theme.
It's a continuation from the pilot, still trying to grab more viewers, obviously, from Dallas.
Get the biggie, get the big villain in to bring in more viewers. Now, that Dallas theme song is composed by the same guy who composed the theme for Knots Landing as well. And I've always thought they have kind of a similar vibe to them. Definitely Dallas is more, I'd say, masculine maybe. But there's definitely a sisterhood, though, with the two songs.
Well, and the only thing I could say, though, Dallas always struck me as a little bit more high camp, it's definitely not as entrenched in reality as Knots Landing. Right. So it is an interesting marriage to see as a spinoff.
So in this first scene, JR is talking to his PR person. His name is Chip Todson, and he's basically trying to make sure that Chip is keeping a low profile when he goes over to Knots Landing to start working on this project that they have going on there, which is offshore drilling. I don't know if that's mentioned in the first scene, exactly what they're going to be doing, but basically it's just kind of setting the stage for some drama that is brewing. And I love what JR says there to this guy. He says to me like, we gotta nip this in the bud.
Oh,
and
yeah.
He says, I'm a specialist at nipping. I have to say, Larry Hagman is so campy throughout this episode. I don't know if you picked up on that. I mean, every delivery is so over the top. I love it.
I'm sure he was having a really good time doing this because it's, probably less serious than him playing his normal JR.
Right. It's almost like a day off.
Right.
He's
vacation.
Playing. Yeah.
From Dallas.
Speaking of playing, we go into the very next scene, and we see young Eric Fairgate playing in the surf. He's actually surfing.
Oh, yeah. And then, of course, Valine now. She's a seasoned regular at the beach.
She's a seasoned beachgoer.
So what I loved about seeing this again was she's got such a sense of Arrested Development that she's making friends with Eric. And, probably they're on the same level as far as emotionally.
Did you notice like she doesn't even know how to swim. So Eric's like, oh, I'll teach you how to swim.
Yeah.
Now, where do you think this was filmed? I couldn't quite figure out, is it Redondo Beach or is it Manhattan Beach? Because it definitely is not, it looks like PVE.
Yeah,
in the distance there.
I thought it was Redondo, but it was a little tricky too because when I was looking at the way that they were walking down to the beach, I'm seeming to think that maybe those walkways are concrete. So maybe they changed out the walkways. You know, it is at least, 30, 40 years,
45 years.
45 years. Sorry. I don't even know what year it is right now.
So then they're talking, and then suddenly they hear this moan from the ship out in the water. And I think that was stock footage of a ship out there.
Like a tanker or whatever. I don't know.
Unexperienced Valine, she supposes maybe it's just a tuna boat. And then Eric says, no, that's no tuna boat.
And he knows his tuna boats.
He knows his tuna boats. What I really like about this, they're introducing these kind of secondary characters, and they're just doing it very naturally, very slowly. Eric, I don't think, has any other scene in this episode, but it gives him something to do because he didn't really have any lines in the last episode. Right?
Yeah,
it was
exactly.
Diana and Michael had the lines.
Right. Now moving into scene number 3, we are going to Gary and Val's kitchen.
Oh, wait. This is the first time we're seeing the kitchen, right?
Yeah.
This reminds me. I almost forgot. Again.
What?
We have another letter from the circle. Or the sack. Did we ever figure out what this
We didn't really figure that out yet, but...
Well, this actually is not a letter. It is a long-lost diary entry from a future best-selling author. Doug, would you care to do the honors?
Sure. This is Valine's diary entry. Well, here Gary and me are on the threshold of a new life together somehow. I can't help but feel we've been through all this before. We started out together so many years ago. We were so full of hope and dreams. There was nothing our love couldn't overcome. But we were wrong, and our marriage fell apart like a house of cards.
No.
Now, 17 years later, how could we think that we could be happy together? Anything's possible, I expect, if you want it bad enough. Back then, I'm not sure we did. It was too easy to walk away. We're going to make it work this time because we both want that more than anything else in the world. I have to believe that and shut jittery fears out of my mind for good. I mustn't think about the dark days when Gary was drinking and making our lives hell on earth. Gary says I have to relax and trust him. Drinking is running away from your problems, and I'm not going to run away anymore. Not from our new home in Knots Landing. Gary says Knots Landing's just a place like any other. He says it's our chance to start over. Really, there is no such thing as starting over. The past stays with you no matter where you go.
Deep, Val, deep.
All you can do is keep your eyes on the path ahead and try not to travel the same road twice. Today, we took some paint and put the name Ewing on our mailbox. As Gary dotted the I felt peace in my heart. The kind of peace that comes from putting down some roots.
Wow.
Sorry about that terrible Southern accent.
I don't think Joan Van Art could have done a better job, Doug.
Well, I think she could.
If you would like to be featured in our Letters from the Sack segment, all you got to do is drop us a line over on Instagram at seeviewcircle. That's all one word. Drop the A and C and put in another E in its place. We'd love to hear your comments about favorite moments or quotes from episodes we've covered, or any memories you may have about watching the show the first time around.
Now you can also email us at seeviewcircle@gmail.com with any specific burning questions about the show. Maybe we'll feature the topic in a future Untying the Knot segment.
So, scene 3, Ewing kitchen. Gary's kind of lamenting to Valine that there's news, in the paper that oil people have come to Knots Landing. And it sort of reminds him of his home in Dallas, which he despises. He wants nothing to do with it. And of course, he's also worried that Richard is going to say something like, oh, I knew it all along. Because in the first episode, Richard said at least twice, what's your connection here? Why are you here, right? So then, of course, it cuts right to Richard saying,
suspicious minds.
I knew it all along.
Gary is involved.
Yes, everybody's talking about it. It's in the paper. Sid's there, Karen's there. They're all talking about it.
Yeah.
So Gary comes out, and I think Karen's like, oh, hey, why don't you come to this community meeting? We're going to, hopefully get together a group that's going to look into this oil drilling project that could potentially harm the environment and, ruin the beach at Knots Landing. And, Gary wearing his best Western shirt there. And I think Sid's also wearing some plaid shirt. I love it. It's like total 70s. He's like, no, not interested. He's like, I got nothing to do with that. And that leads Sid and Karen to both wonder, well, maybe he really is involved.
Maybe he's got something he's hiding.
So in the next scene, Gary and Val are sweetly sitting on their back porch, and Val is trying to convince him that maybe they should go to the meeting after all. And she's kind of like, maybe she has like a flower and she's like picking off the petals. It's like, it's very Valine, right? So finally, eventually, he agrees to go, and she's thrilled, and
they embrace.
Big old embrace, the big old smile.
You can see it on her face that she's so excited that like he's actually agreeing to do something with her together.
She uses the excuse that Karen wanted a packed audience.
Yes.
And then, of course, they cut to the auditorium, and there's like 20 people there.
There's 20 people, and so it's really sad.
My favorite part about this episode is Karen's look, which is this weird, like, throwback to Gibson Girl. You know, I think that was kind of a style in the 70s, but she's rocking it with the choker and the hair and this dress. And so basically, Sid tells her that, people are concerned about this situation. It's a touchy situation because there was a gas shortage in the 70s. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember this.
What do you remember about that?
Well, the only thing I really remember is and it's probably more like the early 70s, I can remember going with my family, waiting at the gas station a couple of hours before you could get your tank filled up with gas.
And I'm sure that historical moment in time is really probably what inspired the concept of Dallas, really, right?
Yeah.
Drilling for oil, this being like such an important issue. And so that's what makes an important issue here as well, because people want their gas so they can drive their car, but they also don't want to destroy their beach and their environment. So that's kind of where the push and pull is here. And it's like kind of our first social issue in Knots Landing. And trust me, there will be more.
There'll be many more to come.
So we then switch to the parking lot. And this is a really interesting scene.
Yeah, this is a real fun one. So we see Richard and Laura arrive at the community hall, but they're already intercepted by Chip Todson, who apparently Laura knows.
Oh, this is a great scene because it's kind of unexpected. You know, here we are, we're kind of already getting into this conflict about the Ewings and the oil and the da-da-da-da. And then there's this new layer thrown on that you're not expecting at all.
Right.
So Laura sees Chip Todson and she's like, oh boy, there's this dude again. But Richard does not catch on to this at all. He's too impressed by Chip's sunglasses and his car. And what happens there?
Well, basically, Laura says that they were co-workers at summer camp.
Oh, right.
Years ago or something like that. And then Richard's checking out the car and it's like, nice car. And basically Chip says, try it on, see if it fits.
That's right.
Really.
That's right. So then he gets in the car.
Cheeky.
He says to Todson, oh, how does she handle? And then what does Todson says?
Like a dream.
And he's totally referring to Laura, unbeknownst to Richard.
Completely.
And then it's funny because I don't know if you noticed when they cut to the next scene back inside the community center, there's like this chuckling. I think the speaker has some chuckling. So it's almost like the speaker is laughing at the joke, right?
Right, right. That was clever, the way they did that.
So then, so then the speaker introduces Chip Todson, who is a PR person for this company called Petrolux, which I guess is working with Ewing Oil. And so Karen immediately gets into, her Karening mode where she stands up and she's asking all about the safety specifics of what they're going to be doing, the environmental impact, the noise pollution, all these different issues. And of course, the guy does all this double speak, right? Like it's just like any kind of politician where they say a bunch of words, they don't mean anything. They don't, they never really get themselves into a situation where they're going to have to back up what they were saying, or they're never going to have to, pull through with the receipts afterwards. Gary actually stands up, and I think this is kind of like the moment that sets the rest of the show in motion. He gets up and he says, why has there not been any studies to find another location where this drilling can happen that's onshore? That's not going to be, right in the ocean at their beach, right?
And it's probably a good thing they had an oil man there, right?
Absolutely, right, because he's going to know more about, the viability of things, right? So after that happens, Todson meets all of the cul-de-sac neighbors. They all kind of get together. And then he, in front of everybody, says he tries to set a lunch date with Laura. And he actually slips her his digits, on the old-fashioned business card.
Yeah, and so it's kind of like we know that's going to be going somewhere in the next couple scenes, which we'll elaborate on shortly. But then we have the following scene. It's Todson reporting back from the meeting to J.R. Ewing, assuring him there's nothing to worry about, but he does reveal that Gary was at the meeting.
Right, and J.R. is visibly pissed. So he's still in Dallas, and he finds out that his brother was at the meeting, possibly giving inside information like you just mentioned. He is not pleased. He says, I'll be there tomorrow.
Yep. So it's great because now we're going to see JR in the flesh in Knots Landing.
Okay, so scene 9, we're back over in the cul-de-sac, and Karen and Val are sort of bonding over Gary's backstory and his dislike for Ewing oil. And I love it because in the first part, Gary is standing in between them. He's like a total himbo stud.
Yeah.
He's always filling out a nice pair of jeans.
Yeah.
Now, if you notice that Karen is wearing red, and I'm really curious because, she wears a lot of red throughout this series. And I think it's something that we need to kind of keep track of. Like maybe we need to have a redometer.
But yeah, that was a really cute look she had on there. She had the white pants.
Was such a cute
look. The red blouse, little 70s kind of blouse.
Okay, so I don't know where Gary wanders off to, but Karen and Val are walking, and they're talking more about this. And basically, she's trying to get Val to convince Gary to be part of this rally that they're going to have later on in the week. But Gary has declined. He doesn't want to have anything to do with it. He only wants to be a technical advisor. And then Karen says to Val, oh, maybe he could use, revenge as his motive, right? Because she says revenge is one of the best motives.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
And then a car pulls up.
Yeah, the car pulls up.
It was a limousine.
It's a limousine, and out comes J.R. Ewing wearing his 10-gallon hat.
Yes.
And, saying hi to Valine. And then Karen is introduced to him, and she says something like, enemies has much more bite.
Right. She doesn't want to be a friend. She's ready to be the enemy. But JR, he feeds off of that. He feeds off of that, butting up against him, right? So he's immediately flirtatious with her.
Yeah.
And it's something that will be further explored as we continue on. I listened to the commentary for this DVD, and Ted and Joan talk about filming in the Granada Hills location. And they talk about how difficult it was to film. And they had a very small window each day. They would have to do it, between this hour and this hour because the light comes in from this side or whatever. And there was always planes going over, right? So they'd have to start and stop or do whatever window. They had to schedule when the planes were going to be. And then, of course, the other issue was that it's so windy.
Oh, it's super windy over there. And that area is kind of the foothills of, Granada Hills. It's kind of next to Porter Ranch as well. Knowing where Crystal Air Place is now, it's like literally around the corner.
Isn't that funny?
But I didn't go there.
That would have been filming that whole time.
Oh, it would have been filming when I was there, but I didn't know.
So back to the show. Scene 10, JR and Val are squaring off in the Ewing kitchen. And again, like I say, Larry Hagman has all these super campy lines that he delivers kind of under his breath. So he's always putting down Gary and Val. I mean, this is a continuation from the scenes that they would have had together on Dallas. He puts in there under his breath, oh yeah, this house was a gift from my mama. And he talks about, I don't know if it was this scene or another scene, how all the furniture was also supplied by her. And basically saying how Gary and Val would never have been able to afford the house or the furniture if it wasn't for the connection to Ewing Oil. And JR basically is begging Val at this point to call Gary up on the phone.
Like, get Gary on the phone.
That's the whole reason why JR is there. He wants to shut him up from potentially ruining their family's, opportunities with this new project. And Valine says what? She says that they just want to be left alone.
Yeah,
they want to live their life.
Be left alone, but JR really pushes Valine to get Gary on the line. So she ends up calling him.
And I'm telling you, my favorite line of the entire episode is right here.
Ooh.
It is so subtle, ingenious, and it is so campy. She's on the phone. She looks so dismayed. She's calling, I guess, Knott's Landing Motors or whatever. And in the background, JR is like looking to the kitchen, and he opens up the cookbook and he just says, oh, I just love cookbooks. It was so good! Because here he is completely manipulating this poor woman, and then he goes and just, it's totally campy. I loved it. So, next scene is
Karen and Laura paint protest signs and gossip at the Avery house. Basically,
Karen's talking about JR, and Laura's asking, oh, what's he like? And then Karen says something like, well, he's not that bad looking.
Right. And then there's also a reference here that said, the marriage is just as solid as yours and mine. There was a reference
perhaps more so.
Yeah, which Karen says this to Laura, which I just made me laugh because, of course, she doesn't know the shenanigans that have been possibly going on.
I have a question. Here we are again. She's wearing that outfit. Why are they painting protest signs or anything to do with paint
with nice
in that outfit?
Right.
Oh my
But
God.
what was funny is, do you remember the phone rings and Laura picks it up and basically she says, please don't call anymore. And she hangs up.
Right.
So
right.
of course, Karen, being the busybody that she is, she's like, well, who's that?
She's like, you can't have that conversation and then not tell me what just happened.
Yeah, I thought that was really funny because it was very real world, to be quite honest. That's something
and also real world was when Karen got up from the floor and said, I think my floor days are over.
Oh yeah, that was funny.
I mean,
was
trust me,
funny.
I got some back issues myself, so I got you.
I feel her. I mean, she was probably still way younger than I am right now, but at that point, she's feeling it.
Okay, so scene 12, JR greets Gary in the Ewing living room. And again, he's just always belittling. He's always poking fun at Gary or poking the bear, really, right? Trying to rile him up. He says something like, oh, if I had known you were interested in becoming a used car salesman, we would have bought you a dealership ourselves.
Right.
What does he ask?
We asked for some booze.
Yeah,
and of course he said, there's no booze in this house.
And it's like implied like you already knew that.
Right,
he still
exactly.
Did it anyway.
So he's just being a jerk. And then wasn't there a reference to what's it going to cost your mother?
Right, because he underlines the fact that they've now been planted in pretty as a picture California. And isn't their life grand now thanks to their mother? JR just says he doesn't want Gary to delay the Petrolux project. And he's also concerned about the meddling of the pretty little lady next door, referring to Karen, of
course. That was funny.
All right, so scene 13, moving on, we're at the Avery home, and Richard is not impressed by Laura's display of affection. She has created a special little poster for him where she says something like,
it says, I heart Richard.
Yeah, which is
that
so
was sweet. I thought that was a really nice moment. And he's just literally
just completely doesn't even register. Why? Because he has an agenda.
Right. He has an agenda because he's decided that he needs to get a job with the Ewings.
Right. So he's a lawyer at a firm, and apparently they don't notice, all the hard work that he does. And I guess he's constantly being wasted at his firm. He has to do research, or he has to file just complaints, and so he wants something more. And he remembers that Laura had a connection with this dude, Chip Todson. So he asks Laura if maybe she can persuade him to get him a job to represent Petrolux.
Right. So he says, have lunch with Chip, which is just like, okay. So
she even says,
gets really angry.
Yeah, she even says, well, I don't like him.
And he said, well, what's the matter with you? You can see she's going to go ahead and make the connection. But she's not happy about it.
You can see the turmoil in her face here at this moment, because I think she thinks that her husband is kind of pathetic in this moment, But she also, what we don't quite know is this longer term dynamic of the relationship. It feels as though she's sort of like under his thumb, but she still thinks he's pathetic. But she also still loves him too. So she's having to do something that she doesn't want to do. And it's really uncomfortable. If you notice,
I think what I really like about her character in general, though, she's probably one of the more complex characters in the show.
Certainly right out the bat.
Yeah, right off the bat. It's like
she goes to the phone, and everything that happens on her face is so it changes from 1 second to the next, because she goes to make the call. She looks trepidatious, and then Richard kind of comes around her and kind of grasps her, and she feels it almost is like, is this an abusive relationship? Like physically, we don't know yet.
Yeah, we don't know.
But it definitely looks like she's super uncomfortable, and he's kind of like hugging her. It's like he's not that likable of a person, and so he's coming to Laura as someone who loves him, and so he's grasping on for all he can. But she's kind of like, oh gosh, what have I gotten myself into?
Right. So now, we're going to see how far she will go.
Yeah. I mean,
to keep her man happy.
Feels like some kind of like a pattern that she's trapped in, and she knows it, and she's allowing herself to be for the time being. Okay, so then we switch back to the Ewing living room. It's kind of the continuation of the scene before. And basically Gary's there with his shirt open, which I just love. It's like the best shot of his chest hair we've gotten yet. And JR continues to belittle both Val and him. He's saying something like, oh yeah, don't worry, you should be able to pay off any bills you may have because your mortgage has already been taken care of. And then what is that? Has Valine delivered that sandwich?
Right, so Valine had made a sandwich for JR, and he says, it's good. What do you call this? And she says, really pissed off. She says, tuna fish. So it was just really funny.
She knows that he's trying to belittle her by saying, like, that's all she can do is create a tuna fish sandwich.
And I also thought it was funny because I kept thinking, well, he's probably never eaten tuna fish because he's so rich. Maybe that's something that they don't eat. You know what I mean? So
then we get this kind of big ultimatum here where, what does he say? He says,
I'll break you again.
I'll break you again. So that's basically alluding to the fact that in the
broken
past,
him once.
Yeah, he's broken him once, meaning he's what? He's driven him to drink, you know?
Maybe.
And he's planning to do it again. If Gary doesn't shut up, right? If he doesn't keep his mouth shut and protesting the Petrolux drilling project, then JR is gonna break him. It's pretty dramatic. Cut to a commercial break.
Commercial break.
Okay, before we get back to the show, it is now time to untie a knot.
So in this segment, we take deep dives into specific production aspects of the series or perhaps provide a bio of fan favorite cast members. This week, we're going to discuss how Knots Landing came to be.
And the story goes. David Jacobs, the creator of Knots Landing, brought his initial concept for the show, an American take on Scenes from Marriage, to CBS in 1977. Scenes from Marriage was a 1973 Swedish miniseries that was conceived and directed by none other than Ingmar Bergman. And it's been adapted a few other times in the years since. Doug, do you remember that Ingmar Bergman movie we watched during the pandemic?
I totally remember that. It was very trippy.
That was
sure.
Wild.
Very weird.
You know, I always have this thing on the TV. There's two settings, right? There's like the movie setting or there's like the natural setting.
Standard.
Whenever I'm watching a movie or a TV series, I have to watch it in movie mode because it's just so distracting when it's like all super HD and you can see every pore in everybody's face. But I think with that one, maybe we got stoned and we put that one on the high definition.
High definition.
Ooh, that was a trip.
Which is always fun. You know, sometimes it's really fun to watch all of these. Like, I think even with Knots Landing, we probably watched it on high definition.
For sure.
Because it's just a different experience, you know. To see
I definitely think Persona, Ingmar Bergman's film, was definitely part of the highbrow on the brow meter. Okay, so David Jacobs' version of Scenes from Marriage would center on the trials and tribulations of four neighborhood couples at different stages in their relationship. But when he brought the idea to CBS, they were not interested. Still, they could see talent in him, so they asked him to cook up something with a bit more excess, a bit more sizzle and spice. So David Jacobs came back with Dallas, and CBS liked it and ordered 5 episodes to air as a miniseries in 1978. And, for all you youngsters out there, a miniseries back in the day would be somewhat akin to like a limited series you enjoy now on several streaming services. Anyway, the Dallas miniseries began airing in April of 1978, and it was an immediate hit that only grew in popularity during its first full season that began in the fall of the same year. Doug, did you ever watch Dallas?
Well, you know what's funny is I didn't really watch it regularly, but I do remember there was this whole deal about the Who Shot JR.
Yes.
So it was like a nationwide thing.
The thing. It was like the zeitgeist.
Right. So everybody was talking about it. So I remember watching that. I'm sure my parents watched it. So I remember watching that episode,
I think
the cliffhanger.
The Who Shot JR was that was the thing that started it all, the cliffhanger. That's what you see used, certainly at the end of a season, right? They'd have this huge cliffhanger where back in the day you had to wait all summer long to find out what happened. And the Who Shot JR was so big.
And I think the other thing would be this, because the way that Dallas is kind of written, or at least, the show itself is a little larger than life characters.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Think it was
my favorite was, of course, Sue Ellen, right? Played by Linda Gray. Pretty much every scene, she's got her glasses and she's got some ice cubes in there and she's rolling them around. She's got that droll.
It is funny though, because I do remember there was a period probably in the mid to late 90s where I was so starved for American television because I lived in the UK for 12 years. So what happened is whenever I could find anything American, I always joke, American trash. I would binge it and watch it. So I remember for a while they were showing Dallas in the UK. So I did watch that along with a few other weird soap operas. In fact, I was even watching Baywatch, believe it or not. I was so starved. I'd be like,
that's definitely lowbrow.
No, but I mean, it was what I was craving, and I wasn't getting that, and
Right.
there was no streaming,
Right.
so you
have to watch what's there.
Well, yeah, and there was like
available
at that point over there they had like 5 channels. So the one channel was showing all the schlocky stuff, whatever they could get cheap, which would be maybe reruns, and then the rest would be like BBC 1 through 4, whatever, Channel 4.
For us, we definitely watched Dallas, but really I remember Friday nights really loving Falcon Crest.
Oh yes, that's another one we're going to talk about.
Before Dallas, and so that's the one that I loved, and it was kind of more campy, like a Dynasty, I guess. But it also had like I don't know, it just felt very sophisticated.
And spoiler alert!
Wine and,
spoiler alert!
Yeah.
But we've watched that together too,
right.
So that's that could be another fun
podcasting
moment.
I do love the first 4 seasons of that show. I think
and we
really
love wine, so it's
we
perfect.
love wine. Oh my gosh, can you imagine?
Yes.
We'll go through a bottle each in the podcast.
Oh God, help us.
All right, back to Dallas. So with Dallas now a proven rating success, it wasn't long before CBS came back sniffing around for another hit, right? So Jacobs had proven his worth, and when Knots Landing was pitched again, CBS gave him the green light to spin the series off from Dallas using Ewing characters that were not integral to the success of the show. Now, the character of Gary, also known as Garrison Ewing, he's the middle brother to Bobby and JR, and he was initially portrayed by soap actor David Aykroyd on the 2-part season 2 opener of Dallas called Reunion. Now, I tried to find out if David was related to Dan Aykroyd or his brother Peter, who is also an actor, but I couldn't find anything. So I don't know, maybe they were cousins?
Maybe somebody out there knows.
Yeah, maybe somebody knows. I couldn't find it. I mean, I think the Aykroyds, Dan and Peter, are from Canada, and I think this dude, David, is from New Jersey, actually, Doug.
Oh, wow, New Jersey. Hey, baby.
So the character of Gary's ex-wife and baby mama to Lucy in the 78 reunion episodes was originated by Joan Van Ark. So she was cast on that series by Irene Mariano and executive Barbara Miller. And when the time came for Lorimar to shoot the pilot for Knots Landing in 1979, David Aykroyd was no longer available. So the role was recast. Enter Ted Shackelford on Knots casting director's radar after he appeared in space with Joan Van Ark in Time Bomb, the 1978 episode of Wonder Woman from that series' 3rd season, which if you haven't seen before, you should definitely go and Google following this podcast.
It's unbelievable. I really think we're going to have to recap that episode at some point to test out on the brow meter.
Oh, my gosh.
But it's so fun to see them together wearing the spacesuits.
I'm afraid that episode is going to break the brow meter.
It probably will.
Yes,
it's really good.
Because Ted Shackelford is basically wearing a silver one-piece suit that doesn't leave a lot to the imagination.
Sure doesn't. And we love Wonder Woman too. So it's okay. I mean, these are the things that, for me, as a complete TV junkie from the 70s and the 80s. I mean, these are the things I grew up with. Oh my gosh.
These are the things you see and you savor and you remember and you're like, oh my gosh.
These were my fantasy daydreams.
My fantasies.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
So anyway, on the Knots season 1 DVD commentary, Joan and Ted actually talk about this Wonder Woman episode. They say that they didn't think they were perfect for that role, but they really did feel that they were perfect for Knots. And they even said that physically it was a perfect casting. But Ted kind of thought, at least in the pilot episode, that they looked almost too much like brother and sister, which you could see a little bit of that.
Yeah,
so,
well, it doesn't. I'm not gonna make any disparaging remarks about Texas or Tennessee, but I've heard about this.
Oh shit! Okay, so ironically, the guy who originally played Gary, David Aykroyd, he would later appear on Knots Landing himself, but simply as a guest star in the season 3 episode. It's called "Mistaken Motives." And he's not anyone related to the Ewings in that episode. Now, obviously, in order to properly spin off a series from another, you need trusty stewards to help in the transition. Dallas leads Patrick Duffy and Larry Hagman do just that in these first 2 episodes of Knots Landing. And we're definitely going to see a few more crossover appearances in the years ahead. That is until we won't. Because, spoiler alert, at some point, the tie between these 2 shows will be irrevocably severed forever. But you'll have to stick around a while to find out why. Okay, so now back to this episode. Where were we, Doug?
I will tell you where we are. We're back now at scene 15. Karen is watering the plants, and JR admires the view.
Gosh.
This is a real good one.
This was campy.
Yeah,
again.
I mean, and look what she is wearing. I love that outfit. She's got those little short shorts, like dungaree denim short shorts.
And Larry is definitely giving this like really salacious look. That was great.
And then he says something to her.
Oh, he's looking for a tour guide. He's looking for a tour guide from a native California.
Right, and she says, I'm from New York. Buzz off.
Yeah.
Which is like really a great line, too.
It was so good.
That was a really great line. And she is from New York. That's why we love Michelle Lee, right? Come on.
Okay, so then we cut to a scene in, I think this is the Fairgate kitchen. And I don't know, did you notice, Doug? Did you notice the lamp?
Oh, I didn't notice the lamp.
Table? Oh, it's a full-on Farrell's ice cream Tiffany-inspired lamp.
Oh, I missed that one.
Oh my gosh, it's so good.
Well, it is funny because I forgot to mention in one of the past episodes, I saw something else that I remember from my childhood on one of the walls too. But I think it was in the first episode.
Now wait, speaking of Farrell's, didn't you say one time that, was it your sister who ran into Michelle Lee at Farrell's?
So it's funny because, well, as a child, we would go to Farrell's like all the time. And
what was the pin? What did the pin say? Or the t-shirt?
Well, I always knew that the Farrell Zeus, that I made a pig of myself at Farrell's.
Yes.
But that's
because for the birthday, trough. They would come out with the pig's trough full of ice cream. Yeah. Which is like scoops of ice cream on top of one another.
Yeah, and everybody could eat the Farrell Zoo, or, and again,
this shows it's like the same era as we saw Karen earlier in the episode looking like a Gibson girl. It's that same kind of throwback.
But what's funny is, anyway, Farrell's did continue on for a while, and then for a short time, they had this weird restaurant up
Mount Asia.
It was a weird, like, kind of modern version of Farrell's. So you could still bring your kids there, and this was probably even in the early 2000s, I think it was still around. So my sister was there. She was visiting. While she was there, she saw Michelle Lee there. So I remember she said, she went up to her and said, "Aren't you Michelle Lee from Knots Landing?" And she said she was very nice.
It is a full circle moment.
Got all very excited.
There's the Farrell's lamp.
Anyway, this might make the cut. I don't know.
No, I love it. Okay, so back to the Fairgate kitchen table there. We have Val, Gary, Sid, and Karen, and they're trying to figure out why exactly is JR here? Why is he here, right? And I think this scene is kind of more like, because they've already been wondering this, right? Like but the scene is here because it needs to kind of keep moving the plot moving forward. And so Sid suggests that Gary start acting like a Ewing.
No, he said think like
a Ewing. Think like a
Ewing.
Ewing. To find out what exactly is going on. What is the problem that Petrolux is facing with this project?
And then, of course, you start seeing the wheels turning in Karen's head, and she basically
because Gary asks, he goes, if only I could find a way to distract him for a bit.
Right. So then Karen says, "I always wanted to be Mata Hari." So basically,
that's coming up.
Yeah, this is the next scene.
Well, actually, the next scene is this was crazy, right? So the next scene is JR and Toddson. They're discussing a business or whatever. I guess this is Toddson's own apartment in California, because I guess the PR guy lives in California for Petrolux, even though they're working with the Ewings. I don't know. Anyway, so they're talking, and then Laura knocks on the door. She's there on the request from Richard, basically, to try to persuade Toddson to get him a job with Petrolux. So JR leaves, and Toddson's very agreeable to it. He's like, sure.
Isn't that the moment when you see him open up the door?
Yes. He says something like, "Well, aren't you going to thank me?" And she's standing there. But dare I say, I don't know if you caught this. They do this shot of her, and she just looks like the spitting image of Marlene Dietrich to me. I don't know why Constance McCashin was never offered a role to portray Marlene Dietrich in a biopic, but she looks exactly like her facially, and even the hairstyle, the hair color as well. It's pretty stunning. But anyway, so it's very implied by Toddson in this moment that it's a quid pro quo.
Right, and it's pretty shocking, I think, to actually
because she walks right in.
Yeah, she walks right in. So I mean, this is where you look at
sleeps with this guy.
Yeah, just to get Richard the job.
But there is something about her that feels like maybe she wants that excitement.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I guess
it's pretty crazy.
If she made the phone call to come over there, then she might have known that might be an expectation, right? I guess.
It's definitely what I will consider the first, like, escandalo moment of the series. Because
I was pretty shocked. I didn't think she was going to go there, and it was like, wow.
So there's a really interesting cut here too, because she goes into the bedroom and he closes the door, and then immediately it cuts to JR opening his hotel room to Karen.
Right.
And Karen's all dolled up. She's got her hair up again. She's got all the makeup on. We don't really see much in that scene. That's just kind of like, showing that she's going in. And then we cut to Gary, who has visited the Petrolux offices in hopes of investigating what's really going on. And I will say, out of any scene in this episode, this is a little far-fetched.
It was a little far-fetched, but I did like the styling a lot. I love the interiors. There was like orange carpeting.
The styling of the office, I definitely made a note of it.
The photograph of the oil rig on the wall, like very 70s with the sunset. That was
to
cool.
me, this was like obviously filmed probably around the same time as the movie 9 to 5. It feels very similar to those like office aesthetics of the dark wood paneling walls. I don't know, maybe there might have been an orange carpet or somewhere in there there's orange. And yeah, I love that. So it's it's crazy though, because Gary shows up, and there was some weird reason why Valine was there. I didn't understand that.
Well, no,
Valine
what happened was
off,
Valine was waiting outside in the car. Then a cop comes and tells her she has to move, which is completely normal real life. Like, how many times have you ever tried to stay in one space and like a car comes, a bus is going to drop
all
off?
The time.
So
all the time.
she had to go around the corner or maybe drive around a few times.
Okay, so
that
was realistic. But what was not realistic was Gary going into the office and then saying to the receptionist something like, "Oh, well, I'm JR's brother, so can't I just go in?" And she's like, "Sure."
Oh yeah, she just let him in.
So then he goes into this room, and it's like Gary suddenly knows exactly where to look and what to look for. I mean, this room has like 8 tall filing cabinets.
Right, and somehow he opened up one drawer.
Yeah,
and
a search of this magnitude would take all day. Like I know when I'm looking for files in my own office, it takes a long time. But magically, he's able to, in the time that whatever the cop comes and tells Valley to move, he's able to find exactly what he's looking for in this crazy old school office storage room of documents.
And then, the other thing I wanted to mention too was, when I saw the outside of the office building, I did kind of like recognize it. So I did go online just to see like what it was. So what was interesting was it used to be the Granada Hills Community Hospital, and it was on Balboa, which I would know that I would have passed it like a million times. Like, I don't know exactly.
And isn't that what we'll find out is that really a lot of these exterior shots are really all along Balboa.
Oh, they're totally along Balboa Boulevard, right? That whole
which
area.
Is the entrance into the country club area where the Crystal Air place is.
Knollwood Country Club.
Yeah. I think because Knots Landing is a fictional place, unlike, say, Dallas is a real place, they definitely have a lot of liberties to represent Knots Landing by different locations in Los Angeles. And it's really wild, especially the coastal scenes throughout the series. I mean, they're filmed all over the place, but it's all meant to be really, like Annie said in the last episode, she just wants to run down to the beach and, jump in the water. You're meant to believe that they're right by the beach and like right at the cul-de-sac, they're just going to walk down the street and go into the water.
Yeah, but I mean, really, from Crystal Air Place to get to, say, Zuma Beach without traffic would be minimal 45 minutes to an hour at least, because you got to go all the way across the valley. You got to go like over one of the canyon roads and then get to the beach. It's a far distance.
Zuma Beach, or more specifically Paradise Cove, is used a lot in this show. It's also used a lot in many other shows as well, because it's kind of a private beach where there's parking. So if you're going to film something down there at the beach, you can kind of close it off. You can get all the crew down there, all the trucks, and you can film your little nice beach scene. And it's beautiful down there too. So anyway, all right. Now we're back on a soundstage somewhere, because Karen is about to seduce JR in his hotel room. And this is such a fun scene. I mean, it started before when JR said some stupid joke about the birds and the bees, whatever. But Karen moves it right along. She's not in there more than 30 seconds. She's already taking off her jacket to reveal her
and then she's
bare shoulders.
Seductively eating a grape.
Oh my gosh, that grape. That grape got more loving than you or me in the last week.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. So basically the scene plays out. It's just basically one innuendo after another until the phone rings, right?
Right.
And so JR gets a call from his secretary or something saying that his brother had been there. And he's like, what? Or no. He's calling
Michelle.
Right. He's calling Karen. He's calling Karen. That's okay. That's fair. He's calling Karen to let her know that he's done.
Right.
So then Jared's like, wait, what's going on?
And then pretty quickly she just says, I gotta go.
Yeah. Do you notice how she says something like, "Oh yeah, I gotta go pick up the laundry, or I have to go pick up the kids." Yeah, it's like she's in Mata Hari mode, right, with the grape, and then she just switches right back into soccer mom.
Yeah, the soccer mom has got to go now.
It was very good.
And then, of course, JR threatens her like he did Gary.
He's like, "Are you having an affair with Gary? I wouldn't have expected that."
Right. It's
wild.
Outrageous.
Wild. Okay, so we're back in the Ewing household, and JR has returned home to confront Gary about the spying that JR has just found out that he's done at Petrolux. He wants to find out, what did he find out, right? And he also wants to, once again, let him know that he shall not get in the way of this project. What does he do? He uses Lucy as a weapon.
Right, he says he's going to threaten to tell Lucy that they're married.
Right, that they're married and that they moved to California without her. And that is his big leverage to get them to keep quiet, to shut up, and not say anything about a possible alternate drilling site that Gary has just discovered. So we get to the final scene, actually, of the episode, and it's kind of a doozy. This is a two-part scene with a lot going on. Mm-hmm. I think, once again, we are back at, I don't know if this is Redondo Beach or Manhattan Beach, but it's the same location, I think, where
beach rally.
Where Valine came to go to the beach in the last episode, because the walkway appears to be the same. Did you catch how the Foley effects of that first walk down that cement block, it was not good. It was not good. And if you notice real carefully, because I had to like rewatch some segments of the scene a couple times, the background noise, like the we want to call it, just the crowd noise. Yeah. They repeat it over and over and over again, this same little tidbits.
Well, you see, I didn't notice that, but you're very sensitive to those things. So,
Okay, so the first part of the scene, we have Richard again pushing Laura to kind of like make an introduction between him and Chip. And Laura says, "Oh, well, he doesn't really have much to do with the Ewings. He doesn't know JR." But then they spot Chip talking to JR. So they go down there, and Laura maneuvers this introduction by suggesting that Chip meet Jason, right? And so they go off to the side, and like Chip demonstrates just what a prick he is. You know what I mean? He's upsetting Laura about her recent decision to sleep with him, basically because Richard asked her to.
And he insinuates, "Is Jason your son?"
Yeah, that was crazy.
Which is like totally outrageous.
Yeah. He's basically saying, "Oh, Laura is such a tramp that we can't even be sure that Jason is her son with Richard, And so I think, does she slap him there?
I think she slapped him. And then, of course, Jason comes up and starts beating Chip. Right. Because he's protecting his mother, too. He sees that.
Right.
There's
so Richard, who is like trying to have this conversation with JR, he's distracted and he goes over to see Laura. Now, he had a little brief moment with JR because JR was not interested in him at all, not until Richard said that he was not on the same side of this issue as the rest of his neighbors, that he was actually, for the drilling.
He was not team cul-de-sac.
Right, exactly. Oh, Richard. Yeah. Anyway, so Richard goes over to run interference between Laura and Chip. And this is a very interesting scene, I think, because again, there's this weird push and pull within Laura where she loves Richard. Obviously, she feels guilty for what she's done. She has to go back and mention this story she told about how they were camp counselors or whatever, or that's what he infers, like, that they had a fling some summer when they were camp counselors. Little does he know that it was literally like the night before that they slept together again. And she's like, I don't like him. He's not a nice guy. And then, of course, Richard sort of says, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I would never ask you to do something."
He said, "I didn't want you to humiliate yourself," which, again, I felt like we had some redemption for Richard.
Absolutely. Finally. Dare I say, as much as he's a prick, I kind of thought he was sexy.
Oh, he's one of my favorite characters.
I thought he was really sexy.
I really like him in the show. I love watching him. He's really fun.
I love watching him. He is such a good actor.
Yeah.
And he really is chewing this role. You know what I mean? He knows this guy is flawed and he's leaning into it. And so this relationship between he and Laura is really complex. And, they do embrace at the end, but you can still see there is some pain in Laura. Even though she says that she loves him, she also knows like what a flawed relationship they have. So it's just really complex, and it's something that we're definitely going to see more of in the future. So yeah, that was great. I think that was really, really nice. Again, it's really a good way of showing, even in the second episode, that we are going to have more layers to these characters that we have already seen.
Yeah.
All right. So then we switch back over to the other group, the other core group of people. We have the Fairgates. They're there kind of, talking about this. That's when Karen says something about JR, like, oh, he may be charismatic. He may be good to look at, her, but what she says, he's not nice.
He's not nice.
He's not nice.
That was the quote. He's not nice. And we're like, well, we know that. I mean, he's not meant to be nice.
So then JR kind of confronts Gary and Val, and he's like, here's your last chance. Don't mess this up. And then basically Valian just takes, the bull by the horn. She says, you know what? You will not intimidate us. Go ahead. Tell her. Tell Lucy. It's okay. Will she be hurt? Yes. Will it affect all of us? Yes. Will we get over it? Yes. And that's just the moment where basically JR realizes, oh shit, like I'm not going to be able to use this leverage and I'm going to look like an asshole. And he's going to reveal that there were other locations for the possible drilling. Now, ultimately, even though there is, I guess, a money concern, right? Because it will cost them more money. It's going to cost a lot
more money for them to drill inland, but...
Right. But don't you think really ultimately... JR is really just doing it to stick it to Gary, really, right? I mean, that's probably his real motive.
Totally. But then he also, JR fires Chip.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
Abruptly.
Yes, because he needs a way.
On to the information.
Yeah, he needs a way to kind of get out of this. So he fires Chip, saying that he held on to the information, putting him in bad light, so that he can then kind of save the day, right? So he decides he's going to address the crowd. He's going to say that Ewing Oil is going to take the financial hit. And of course, the beach goes crazy. The beach goes wild.
Everybody goes crazy. Everybody's happy. And then he does hire Chip back again.
Immediately.
To do what? Like PR?
To do PR, because he wants to be on the cover of Time Magazine.
Right, he wants to be on the cover of Time Magazine for being such a environmentalist kind of dude. So it was a win-win-win-win for everyone.
There was a great little line before all this happened, before he stood up and spoke to everybody. He was kind of saying to Gary, like, oh, you're finally, acting like a Ewing or something like that. If you go ahead and do this.
Yeah.
And Gary said something like, oh yeah, nothing's going to stop me from delivering this message, aside from maybe a rainstorm or something. And then he says, and it never rains in Southern California, which is not really true. As we've seen in recent years.
We sure know.
There's another little great moment, though, at the end there, when Valine had said earlier in the scene, she said, oh yeah, go ahead and call Lucy. She actually gives him the change to call her. And then after everything happens, he gives it back to her and he says, oh, you're probably going to need this more than I am. I thought that was just true JR again.
Cheeky.
Being cheeky and putting people in their place, right? So the scene pretty much ends with all of our heroes walking back up that cement plank. And I have to say, that shot with the beach in the background and the Fairgates coming up all arm in arm, I just had one question. Where are Jack, Janet, and Chrissy? And all of this.
Oh, well, they're at a different beach in Santa Monica.
Beach, but it was the same vibe. Oh, I loved it. Okay, so that's the end of the episode. Now we're going to talk about any other little hanging pieces here. What did you think about the guest stars?
You know what? I enjoyed seeing JR, I guess. I would say the only thing is, I'm not a huge fan of the whole Dallas thing.
Yeah, I don't need the crossovers for me personally, but I totally understand why.
I understand why it's there.
And I will say he was enjoyable to watch, and he was super campy.
But I do love him more as Major Nelson always than as JR.
I agree.
But, I'm a Genie. Genie is one of my tops too as a child growing up. So I always liked him.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that as JR, he definitely chews through the scenes, much like, say, Jane Wyman on Falcon Crest as Angela Channing, or David Selby as Richard Channing. Like, every line is just amazing. And he does deliver my favorite quote, which again was, I just love cookbooks.
And then I would say also, I think we try to recap the best scenes. So
yeah.
What is your favorite scene?
My favorite scene was definitely the first scene between Laura and Richard in their house, because I felt it was so complex and it showed so much of their relationship. And I just love that kind of unpeeling of the onion. Like it's a new layer to the show. So it's not just a layer of their relationship, but it's a layer of the show that gives me hope that there's going to be more to come. You know, because again, in the first season, let's be honest, a lot of the shows in Knots Landing are kind of episodic. You know, it's a storyline that happens in the episode and it's done in the next. Right. And so I like to see this through line, because obviously in the future seasons, it's going to be very much a through line.
Right. You're going to go from beginning to end, and it'll be a little bit more fluid.
So that was definitely my favorite scene. Huge kudos to both Constance and John for the acting in that and just the nuances that show who that couple is. What about you?
I loved the seduction scene. I just thought it was really, I love camp. So,
of course,
that for me was just so funny.
The grape. I mean, that's the best. That's the best co-star. The grape. And
then I still, again, Karen having, I have to go pick up the kids.
Yeah.
Feed my husband, blah, blah, blah. Bye.
Yes.
Bye now.
Hey, I have a question. Where was Kenny and Ginger in all this? I guess they don't care about the environment.
Yeah, it is weird that they were not there.
I was kind of bummed. I
would have liked to at the rally.
I'd like to see them at the rally, baby.
Yeah, I don't know. I would say this though too. I had my other thought about the whole entire episode was, I thought it was a good second episode, but I think I really do prefer the cul-de-sac shenanigans, like when it's more of the drama going on around the cul-de-sac rather than somebody coming in and is less.
Absolutely. Dare I say, in a way, when we see more of these kind of Dallas crossovers, in a way, it's kind of more of a distraction to what's going on, right? It's like pulling us out, but that's because they're trying to pull the Dallas people in.
Right. So. They have to start somewhere, so,
Okay, so guess what? We are now coming in for a landing on this episode to get right down to the Lotus Point.
Yep, the Lotus Point is not just some fancy country club type of joint with a river running through its lobby. It's also our gauge of how lowbrow or highbrow a show, movie, or series ultimately is. So what did you rate this second episode of Knots Landing on the Brow Meter, Brady?
I have to say it's a little bit campier. This one's a little bit campier, so I'm gonna give it a 3.5. Let's just a little slightly lower than the last one. I mean, there is the kind of social issue of the oil. But I definitely think there was a lot more camp in this episode.
I agree. I'm actually on this one. I will say I would probably give it the same rating. I was thinking kind of right there in the middle-ish.
All right. So I should say this, going forward, when we get to the end of the season, we will tally up the combined brow meter score at Lotus Point and find out just how lowbrow or highbrow this season was. Okay. So, all right. So that's it for this week. If you've liked what you've been hearing, please subscribe to our podcast on whatever platform you may be listening right now. It's free for you to subscribe, but that little action does wonders for us, and the algorithm helps others find us. So please do that. Hey, Doug, shall we let them know what's coming up in the next show?
Sure. Next on Seaview Circle, teacher's pet Richard runs for a school board seat against a free-thinking teacher whom Karen finds dangerously attractive.
Oh, that is scandalous. I suppose there's nothing left to say other than see you then. Back on the sack.